Hello. I am live. Yes, I am. And I'm waiting for Ruxandra and Magnus. She was just here, but her camera wasn't working, so she's going to try on her phone and come back in. And then at least we can have one of them to talk to. And Classical Odyssey is what I've titled this. That's what she calls her page on, her website and what she does. She's an artist and a devout Christian. So is Magnus. And initially, I had contacted her to do some artwork for me. And she said, under the condition that I debate her on religion, being she's devout Christian and she knows I'm just a little bit pagan. And I said, okay, that's fine. We can do that. And that's what this was meant to be. And then she enlisted help in the form of Magnus, who was a nice gentleman as well, who she is sending him the link to join. I don't know where he is. I have had no direct contact with him, so hopefully he's coming as well. There's Ruxandra. And the stage. Hello. Hello, can you hear me? Yeah, yes. I can.
Yes,
excellent. So we're in business. It was all very last minute. Sorry, I was late and Ruxandra was late. I was just explaining to the viewers that, and we're live for the first time. Oh shit! I heard an echo. Maybe it's all right. Live for the first time on not just YouTube but Twitter and Facebook at the same time. So I don't know what that means.
Never tried this before. I had some unforeseen technical difficulties, very odd errors. So I hope this will go very well.
It should be great. It should be fine. You sound a bit quiet. It could be my computer. I'll turn up the volume. I don't know if you can come a bit closer or anything, in case it's quiet. And is Magnus okay to come as well, or?
Yeah, he should be here anytime, any minute. Let me check the.
Okay. Well, we'll start with that. We won't do anything that excludes him or anything. But I was just saying. So, the whole setup was I had contacted you about doing some art, and you said under the condition you could debate me about religion, and that's what we were originally going to do. However, we discovered that we had all these other mutual interests about classical art and preserving art, and especially Magnus as well. And you guys are even involved in a kind of, I don't know, what do you call it? A foundation, is it? Or what do you call it that? Organization?
Yes. So we met through a Christian organization that we volunteer for. It's called Trinity. It's for Christian students. It's basically what it offers is mentorship for students who feel completely isolated in the academia. This is a whole nother issue that we can talk about, what's going on in the academic system, especially when it comes to social sciences and humanities. That's very unfortunate. And now Magnus is doing something quite amazing.
Oh, I see him. I see him there. I see him. He's there. Yeah.
Yeah, he's coming.
Magnus.
Greetings. Good to be here. I'm so glad to talk to you again.
Yes, I'm very glad to have you on. Thank you for coming on, both.
Happy to see you, Magnus.
And we were just sort of introducing the whole thing. Ruxandra was sort of introducing the organization you guys are part of. So I'll let her maybe finish that, and then I'll let you introduce yourself as well, because you have a very interesting background as well. So
I'm probably going to finish about Classical Odyssey because I want Magnus to talk about what he's doing, and I don't want to overlap. Yes. So I started Classical Odyssey maybe in around 2021. It started as a YouTube channel. I can talk a lot about why I chose the terminology, but I wanted to start more of a project because I didn't want to just deliver something visually. I wanted to deliver something more. And I worked on my artist statement over the years, and I came to, I think the core of, let's say, my mission, what I'm trying to do is art and science rooted in the Logos, and about that we can talk a little bit later. But I want to promote the idea that beauty is objective and to honor all the great artists that have contributed to what we have today. So the history of the arts is a continuum. It's a very beautiful tradition, and actually, the more you study it, I talk with some friends who do the same thing. You get to the conclusion that there's one art tradition because it's so unified when you get to the core and the essence of it, of what it means.
Yes, I agree. And that will tie in nicely with my argument for you later on as well. And yeah, so Magnus, how would you introduce yourself? Please go ahead.
Yeah. Yes, I'm a Norwegian that has gone through many phases in my life of change. Growing up in as a sponsored skateboarder and playing in metal bands in a very type of Marxist home, to having sort of a midlife crisis in my early 20s for meaning and purpose. It was not, that type of just chasing women and the next adrenaline rush to start to feel very empty. And I was doing quite a lot of drugs at the time, things like that. Just isolated myself from the world and just said, okay, I want to find purpose and meaning. And so I went through many, many phases of, it started with meditation, and then it was success literature, and then I went on a spiritual journey, first coming to the church, and then I went to the Mormon church, and then I was a Freemason, and then I moved to Spain and was in the Hebrew Roots movement and didn't eat pork and kept the Shabbat. And then I came to more of an evangelical church, and then it just kept on maturing and maturing. While I've been a businessman and just gone through a lot of phases in my life, looking for truth, looking for what is good, and I come to a point now where I'm have very strong both principles and also experiences that I lead my life by. And through it all, I kept my passion for music. Now more and more I've gone into being a classical composer, had music performed by an orchestra in Vienna now a few weeks ago, and continue to support more composers and painters and sculptors, especially to transcend the dehumanizing facets of modernism to ennoble people. So there's a lot of enthusiasm around this because I think we have come to a point in history where there's a lot of totalitarianism in arts and entertainment, and it's time for a reform.
Yes, excellent. And I fully agree. And I've been sort of trying to do the same thing on my own for a long time. I almost gave up. I just sort of said, well, there's my ideas, and I'll stop harping about it on about it all the time. But yes, you're doing great work having an actual organization full-time involved in trying to prove that art, beauty and art are objective goals, and that we must return to beauty. There's a couple questions I must ask you based on your personal story there that I didn't hear before. First of all, do you still play black metal or skateboard or any of that?
I was just out today actually skateboarding. So then I take off my 3-piece suit and on with the army pants and out there skating the streets. So I still love that. I love a kick. Still, I got my electric guitar behind here. Can do some shred some solos, but mostly when I listen to music now, I put on some good old J.S. Bach, and I get more and more drawn to the classical world. I was at a chateau in France in November, and my heart had beaten like that since I was a kid, I think, staying there for 3 days. So I get more and more into the classical world as a way of deepening joy, and I think it's so good for people what the classical world can bring to us. So it becomes more and more that feels my reality.
And who are your favorite classical composers, and in what style, or what oeuvre would you say your compositions are in, out of the or is it totally unique?
Right. Well, my music is inspired both by the Baroque era and 80s heavy metal. So I bring a bit of the groove and the power from there, a bit of fight from there, and I think the highest achievement of melodic beauty was in the Baroque period. You have some in the romantic era as well. So of course I love Chopin and some of these pianists, but J.S. Bach, Mendelssohn, some Beethoven, but Handel. I really love the Baroque era, because I think there you got a wonderful unity of all the elements of music coming very strongly together, both with in a wonderful union, I would say.
Yeah, it is some of some of the sweetest, like the I can't remember. So it's been a while now. I can't remember all the composers. What's the one? Just these lovely, the chamber music kind of thing, but it'd be so dramatic and so sad. Like some of the music, like what's that famous song from Barry Lyndon when they're doing the duels? Who did that one? It's not like Pachelbel or somebody. I can't remember. But there's a lot of that kind of slow marching emotional music that's just so sweet. And it is. You're right. The Baroque. I mean, Baroque architecture and so forth. It's not. It's excellent as well, but you know, I don't know that it's the pinnacle of architectural achievement. You could make an argument that Baroque music is the best of the classical music, or music at all. You could actually say that. So that is a good choice.
Yeah.
Oh, one last question based on your personal stuff. I did have. Sorry, is if your parents were a Marxist atheist, what do they think of you now? Have you convinced them back, or do they hate you? Or how?
Right. Well, it's a challenging relationship, I would say. It is limited and it's challenging, but out of principle, I have a principle of honoring my parents. So it doesn't really matter what I feel. But of course, there's another principle of that we have to let the peace of God guard our hearts. So because everything flows from the heart. So at the same time as the intention should be love and honor where honor is due, at the same time we need to guard our hearts. So so there's a balance there of put it that way. But I live in a different country, and so we don't see each other that much. With my father, I keep more contact. He's more the scientist, PhD biologist, atheist type of guy, and then my mother is more the radical feminist type of teacher personality. So it's quite an interesting upbringing, having those two perspectives. They divorced when I was 2 years old. You can imagine those two perspectives coming together in one house. But he was a bit more conservative. But I really think that very early on I figured out I needed to go my own paths. It was quite of a mess at many times.
Right. Would you say then can they recognize and feel pride in your achievements, the orchestra in Vienna and so forth and all that? Or
yeah,
like, that's my son.
Yes, my father is very proud, and with my mother, I think that she do recognize that I achieve many things in my life. I have kept achieving many things all my life, really, and she does respect me for that. And we have. She's also kind of a go-getter, so we can kind of bond a little bit around there for that limited time. But then suddenly, there's a Trump conversation or anything like that, and just the hell breaks loose. But
stop. Yeah, don't even bother. Don't even bother. So Ruxandra, let me ask you on a personal level too. So were you always Christian?
Yeah, so I grew up in a Christian household. I'm sorry, was I talking over you?
You did. No, go ahead. I talk too much.
Yeah, because I think I don't hear that well. Maybe I should have had the headphones, but I grew up in a Christian household, and I think the more I advance in age, the more I feel like I've always had a sense of the existence of God, ever since I can remember, actually. Because I was taken to the Orthodox Church, and I remember my first memories were the Byzantine icons and the representation of God and Jesus Christ in the the Byzantine canon. So my parents always took great care of.
This is Romania. He's from Romania.
Yeah, I'm from Romania. I forgot to mention that. So I'm from Romania. I grew up in Romania. I went to school in Romania, and then I left when I was 20. I studied in Germany, then I got married, I came to Denmark, and I live here right now. So I always read the Bible since I was small, and I think I grew up into it. I never had moments of doubt about the existence of God, and I never had moments of doubt about whether Christianity is true or not in regards to other religions. But the more I matured, I started to get all these questions because I wanted to defend my faith. And so I think it's through the means of apologetics that I think I went through the more difficult questions, like why is Christianity the only true religion? Why is it different from, how is it different than other religions? And how do I defend it in a scientific context, in academia? How do I defend it with my friends? So I think that tested my faith in a good way. Plus the difficulties of life. I had an incredible life experience for the past, I would say maybe more than 10 years. I think I've been through quite some severe health issues that really brought everything to the essence. So no, I mean, I look back and I feel really grateful that I got through those moments that it felt like I had to give everything out of me so I could get over them, and even more. And now looking back, I feel like God allowed me to go through those moments, because it's unfortunately only through suffering that we advance in our depth as human beings. That's a fact of life, and it's very sad. But when it's a lot of happiness and comfort, we tend to stagnate and even to retrograde sometimes. So I think that was wonderful in the sense that it proved that my faith was real because it worked. If it worked in those circumstances, it has to be true. So if I go into details, I feel like if I tell somebody, look, I've been through this, there's no way you can tell me that you're an atheist now, or that God doesn't exist, or that there's, at least just to accept the idea of a higher power, and from there to march on other Christian arguments. So, yes.
Well, I'd be very curious. I would be curious, at least later on, to hear your arguments, your apologetics and your scientific arguments for God, because that's what I'm mostly interested in. And I can see then. So when you challenge me to talk about it, to debate that, I can. So to me, it's you're using me to test your faith even further, or just to hone your skills. I don't think anything could ever shake your faith by the sounds of it. But I mean, that's also. I mean, the Orthodox are notorious for being excellent at holding on to their faith. Orthodox and Muslims in certain religions seem to be able to hold out and do better. I'm not sure what it is they teach or how, but it must be something good. And I'd like to know what it is, because I view faith. You have to, in my view, you have to separate the faith in the personal sense of it and what you believe and how you feel about it, and as you said, when you're searching for the scientific excuses for it, you have to objectively view it as how it works and the best way for it to work, I think, even though maybe to some people it sounds blasphemous to discuss it in that way. But all three of us here are from different faiths, I think, right? Magnus, you're some sort of Protestant, are you? Is it? Or... Yes,
I'm part of the Presbyterian Church.
Right. Right. So arguably, different faiths. I was raised Irish Catholic, but I'm sort of a pagan now, and whatever. I'm sort of in between. But so Ruxandra, let me ask. Ruxandra is an incredible artist. I mean, obviously we know Magnus is as well in music. Ruxandra is an incredible visual artist, very excellent at drawing and painting, and she's slowly learning this. This isn't what she does full time. She does some other thing. She's studying to be a geophysicist or something, or what is it?
Geoscientist is a very
geoscientist. Sorry.
Yeah, I can talk about that. It's something that I really love what I do.
But I want to ask you quickly, in what way does your faith then, is your art an expression of your faith, or is it some other thing? And is your mission with art, obviously it's related to your faith. I mean, I know that, but maybe you can talk about how they're related or something.
Sure. There's many ways to get to the point, like all roads lead to Rome. So I'm trying to focus on at least, maybe a couple, not too many actually. So I think art, science, they're basically tools of knowledge, of experiencing the creation of God. So science deals with the how do things operate in the real world, in the tangible world, things that we can measure. So science has to be an exact science, it's measurable. But we all know that there's things that are above the material realm, which are not equally important, they're more important than the physical realm, which are the immaterial things such as, the laws of logic, the laws of the universe, the unwritten things, the information in our DNA, the information in our genetic code, the laws of logic themselves, reason, abstract concepts, all of these things are immaterial. So we can discuss these things through theoretical science, but also art, because I constantly ask myself sometimes futile questions like, why do we do this? What is the meaning of, basic things? What is the meaning of certain banalities of life? So I think art is a tool to explore the transcendent reality that God gave us access to. And through art, we can explore the eternal things of the divinity, and we can experience God in very profound ways that science cannot, it doesn't allow us to. So I think, as I said before, so to go to the beginning, why did I choose the name Classical Odyssey? Since Magnus gave you a very personal testimony, I wanted to at least balance this conversation out. So I started in 2021, I think it was around 2021. And I got a lot of encouragements from friends to do a YouTube channel and film myself drawing. And at the time, I was actually recovering from a really, really bad moment with my health. And I was really trying to get into this discipline of like focusing my mind on it can be done, I can be better, I can get out of this. And at that time, I was reading the Bible. I was reading a lot of John Chrysostom, which was my anchor. I really recommend John Chrysostom as my favorite author of all time.
What's the name? John who? John what?
Chrysostom, or John Goldmouth. He's one of the church fathers.
Okay. All right. Okay.
And I was reading the Odyssey, and I read the Odyssey of Homer, and I read some critique of the Odyssey at that time, and it helped me tremendously in thinking about the issues of life, because I now took them as an adventure. Why do we have heroes? Because heroes put their lives at stake, and they go through inexpressible dangers and perils and suffering. And the end might not be a happy end, but it is glorious because of what they go through, and that they're open to this adventure. So I started to see my life as an adventure, and I saw art as an adventure because I could explore things that I would otherwise not be able to through science alone. And so I came to this like sort of conclusion that everything, as a Christian, everything needs to be rooted in the Logos. The Logos, which is a ancient Greek concept. It's taken
a pagan
also,
concept, yes.
Yes, and it's taken by John in the New Testament. You have especially the first 3 verses of the first chapter of John. In the beginning was the Word, the Logos, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And Logos is such a complex concept and notion because it encompasses, reason, ideas, spoken word, and everything is completely subsumed into the personhood of Christ. And if everything is rooted in the Logos, then art is what art is supposed to be, science is what science is supposed to be, and living life every day is exactly how it should be. So they're all interconnected because they all have to deal with knowing God and revealing something from the divinity, like imitate Christ, because the creative act, both in craftsmanship and science and art, is something of the divine substance that God allowed us to have so we can enjoy the feeling of creation. So no matter what I do, I use light motives through history. It can be pre-Christian history, but it all has a Christian moral to me, morality and scope in a sense, because I know that God is always in control of the whole history. So I have this overall large scale picture of things, and I hope it made sense.
Yeah, it's very interesting, but it doesn't sound like you must have been someone who drew as a kid and had interest and talent from the get-go, no? Or is it something you literally just switched on? Oh, I'm not going to do science anymore. I'm going to do art.
Yes, I always drew. I think I drew since I was maybe 3, but I never really studied it systematically. So I have to say my dad is incredibly talented. He doesn't really draw anymore, and he taught me some basics of proportions and especially horses. We were both obsessed with horses. But I never really gave consistent attention to art because I was always focused on school and science subjects. Also because of my upbringing, but yeah, also thinking about the future, it was a little bit hard to envision a sustainable future with just art alone. But I had a hiatus of more than 10 years where I did not draw at all. So I just started again in 2019, and that's where I committed myself, like, if I live this life, I want to see what I can become as an artist. I don't want to die and regret not having tried at least. So I devoured everything I could in the evenings, after work, after my job, after studies. I would just study, especially the Russian academic drawing. That's my biggest influence, I would say.
Your biggest influence was what? Sorry, I missed it. It started to rain
It's
here.
the Russian approach, the Russian method.
The Russian approach. Yeah. Oh, they're very good. Yeah. Well, I mean, listen, for someone who does it as like a spare time activity while you're doing these other important things, I mean, you were so much better than so many people that claim to be full-time artists. So you really, I think you're very, very good, and you've done an excellent job.
Thank you very much.
Very hard. It's all very, but you know, when you study art in that way, when you see a beauty as objective, and you study the masters, and you try to emulate that sort of thing, I think you know. And Magnus is probably the same with music. You come to realize that there's a science to it. It's not this kind of thing we're taught about art being a random act of personal expression, though that is a quotient, a part of it. There is definitely a science to it. You must learn strictly, and so many details, and a whole universe of labor that you must come in tune with and come to know before you can express yourself personally. Where, you know, nowadays a modernist will say, "Oh, I've just, you know, thrown this paint on this canvas. This means, you know, that I've had a bad day, or this is the, you know, whatever," right? They think they've expressed themselves, and that's it, but without a scrap of that technical, scientific part of it that was always imbued with art and always should be part of it. You can't, if you have the natural, you have to have, there's maybe three parts of it. You have to have the natural, something of a natural talent and interest. You want to be a creative person. You've seen some art, music, or drawing, and you want to emulate it. Then you have to have something to say in it. I guess you do have to have some personal expression, some ideas, something you want to do that's your own. But then on top of that, you have to have the rigor and the intelligence and the work ethic to learn the science of it, because it is like a science. What you are when you're drawing is you're creating an illusion of reality in a way. And there's so much to it, just even in line art, just in getting the right line. Something you do very well, which I saw right away with those line drawings, those kind of, even in ballpoint, which I used to do. I used to love doing ballpoint too. I have all these drawings when I was a kid of ballpoint stuff, like highly detailed, and it's great. I love to see it. So it's excellent. So Magnus, again, what do you think about all that?
Well, what I can say is that I think it's very important that we recognize the value of beauty and of creativity. I think after the Enlightenment period, it is something that has really, you could say, killed in one way, killed the soul in one way. There is a certain level of death if you are getting into too much intellectualism, or everything becomes so functional and rational. And I think to really understand the value that the creatives have in society is something that I think it's very important. Ruxandra mentioned that there was some time where she didn't do this calling, or this part of her gift, and now she's faithful to that. And I think that's very inspiring to share those stories. And I actually think that in the time that we're in right now, this is an era where the creatives can really do a lot of good, because you can see that the creatives have been doing a lot of bad with the woke Hollywood and the corrupt.
They're not even creatives. They're not even creatives. That's just like
clicks in both the visual art scene and in various universities of music, where there's instead of looking for what brings audience, you look for what brings subsidies from the state. So you have you have a couple of famous pieces and some shit in the middle, right? So and that's what has been bringing all the classical scene down. And so many people are now thinking, okay, what is contemporary music? And they don't even think about contemporary classical music, because it has been so full of death. So I think one thing that I'm thinking about is, yes, I also had a period where I didn't do my music since I was a sponsored skateboarder. That took a lot of time, but I never really knew that I could compose music before later in my 20s. I grew up in a lot of bands. I was there and playing in bass and then electric guitar, and but didn't know much theory, didn't know how to improvise, never wrote any songs, not even a simple song, nothing.
you would just play the solo over the, you weren't involved in the songwriting, is that right?
Weren't involved at all. It was just more like, okay, play this stuff, and then just banging my head and being along for the ride. And of course I had a lot of great rhythm, right, playing bass a lot of most of the time. I had
bass. Okay.
Yeah, so I had a lot of that going, and then I just started mastering like neoclassical metal and those type of things in my 20s. But the point was that when I went to do a musical degree I went to San Francisco, and I had a course called Listening to Western Music, and I trained my ear. It was a potential that was in me all those years that I didn't know I have. And so when my ear was truly in tuned, and I could kind of take in everything, then I started to receive these melodies, and they would become clear enough that I could sit and just write down line after line, while I was at the same time trying to catch up on my theory and, okay, what am I really doing? I just hear that the trombone just got to do this, and things came in a very flow in a way like that. So there is so much potential around us. If people can get in contact with that universal sense of beauty, that universal sense of quality, there is some common sense, I think, that has been suppressed by all the blah 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 with people who you don't have what it takes. You even have some of these famous modernist composers that was caught listening to one of Grieg's concerts, and he say, I wished I could make music like that, but I don't know how. And you also have other very famous composers from Vienna saying making complicated music is very easy, but to make simple, good sounding music, that's very hard. So I think many of the artists in visual and music that is out there now is people that lacks the talent, and they also have a philosophy that is against that punishes achievement and ambition and all of that. And the mixture of all of these thought patterns makes it so then you can then kind of just reinvent the wheel because they cannot win at the real game. So that's just some of the thoughts that came to my mind here. Of course, lots of other things to comment on, but I think you can ask to be more specific if there's something special direction you want me to take here.
No, that's it. I do I think, say if you're doing the metal music, so there's a certain metal music is all about creating a specific kind of feeling, which is, how do you describe it? I don't know. It's like a high energy feeling, like a, I don't know. It's unique to metal, right? So you know what it is, right? And so if you have the ability to somehow make that out of the music, that is the creative process of metal. And it's interesting and unique and wonderful. Probably, though, I think with the ultimate, if music, the ultimate goal, not the ultimate goal, but the ultimate trick of music is if it can make you feel sad and cry, and not through the lyrics, just through the music. And this only happens very rarely, right? And that's when you have a special thing. And that's right. Very much the world of the Baroque, let's say. You can certainly get it from there, or Beethoven and things like this. So and that is probably the pinnacle of music, to draw that out of you. Like, if you think about it, like, how does that work? What is it doing to you? It's not even, there's no words, you have no specific idea in your mind. And all of a sudden you're sad and you feel like crying. I mean, it's made, it's totally whatever it is, however you would describe it. So I just thought of that when you were talking about the method. And you're right, you do need natural, yes, it is a matter of natural talent. So let's say in your organization, how have you divided up what you teach or what you tell people? So obviously you accept people from every walk of the arts. This is one thing I talk about in my book, let's say, which is very complicated, because we talk about art, we talk about creativity, but you can be artistic and creative in any field, including science. In fact, they say in science, creativity is the greatest, one of the greatest assets to have, or whatever, right? If you're going to come up with theories and things. But like, in terms of what has been lost and what we need again, I think the guild system that existed through the medieval period, back into the Roman period, and beyond into prehistory, basically, where you have every vocation is represented in the guild, and you have your flute playing guild, your painting guild, your baroque musician guild, your shoemaker guild, your woodworkers guild, and each guild looked after its own, was responsible for that art, that craft, and they had their masters, which taught the apprentices, and they went through that whole system, and it was imbued with religion and esotericism. They even had their own little rituals and things, and all that was destroyed by the corporations, by basically in the late 19th century. The corporations supplanted all this, and it just made it sort of, we still have the remnant terminology. It's used only in some places, like journeyman, and that a journeyman was a guild member who would go to another country to learn what they were doing. Like if you were in the plate making guild, you went into, and you were in Norway, you went to Sweden as a journeyman to see what the Swedes were doing with their plates and come back and teach everybody, right? All these terms and things. So I just think that is obviously not only, like, this is the kind of thing that was lost, these traditional things that were lost in the materialism and with the atheism and the whole scene of modernity, from the arts to the attitudes and everything. So I always think of the guild. So I was asking about your organizations. How have you structured it to accept people from all the different, because you can say arguably a baker can be a creative artist with his baking, right? But then you have the literal visual artist who does nothing but paint pictures, which is sort of something else, and the musician. So it gets a bit clouded and difficult to label everything. Do you focus just on music and like painters, or what? Do you know what I mean? This is my broad question, which is awkward and confusing, but hopefully you know what I mean.
I understand. We have many initiatives, and the unifying theme is to bring in more beauty. And you can find beauty in many genres, but we are especially focusing on the classical genre, and we hope that will also bring a revival of beauty in metal, hip hop, pop music, worship music, etc. So we strengthen. We are on a quest to find the greatest living talent today, both the painters and sculptors and musicians, basically. To find the greatest, it's like a treasure hunt. And I used to dress
very much the academic fine arts, let's say, painters, sculptors, musicians. What about
those three is the main focus now, and through the Together for Beauty, we have these summits we had in Oslo. Now we're going to start having a festival. We're developing an app right now, and there, we don't want to. It's very, very important that we don't counter the totalitarian attitude that modernism has had and become like this type of gatekeeper with that same type of attitude. But at the same time, but at the same time, and we have people on the team that really experience Soviet, and that really like, okay, that was just the worst. So we are very clear about freedom of speech, freedom of expression. We hold on to principles like that. And we talk about these things, and that really helps us to that kind of, I totally disagree with you, but I would be if you're right to say it. That kind of an attitude just helps a bit to start creating more dialogue, because I think there's a lot of people who are more in the modernist sphere that are there because they're afraid to lose their jobs, or they would actually want to be less modernist if they only knew there was a world to catch them, because
Yeah.
some of these talents, they get freezed out from the establishment and from people, and then what do they do? So what has been very, very important early on is to create a international big community, so people who are ready to step out of these politically correct patterns within the arts. They can have a new life. There's opportunities, there's work, there's friends, there is everything. So we don't accept everything on the app, for example. What we say is that we only want work there that has some sense of that objective, transcendent quality of beauty. And what is that? Of course,
but someone does have to judge that. You say you don't want to be a gatekeeper, but that is a hard thing, because you will. I don't know if it's you or who. Someone has to make that judgment for submissions, which is
that's right.
Yeah, that's nothing you can do about that. That's
right. Yeah, and it's so basically, just by, I always like that, make sure that what you do repels some people and the other people love it, because it saves you a lot of time. Right. So
yes.
if I used to run a music school in Norway, I put some clear thing. It sounds a bit capitalist, and then it was it repelled somebody. Okay, Magnus is just way too Arnold Schwarzenegger in the way he speaks. Okay, great. So then I save both of us time. So I think as soon as if you just say this is beauty is what we're trying to do here, then people will have some different definitions of that, and we really want to see the full diversity of where that can go. But there are certain things that we would just say, this is not the direction we want to go. And even within classical music, since we want to reach a wider audience on a deeper level, there's just certain styles that will not really do that, and it's not good that we focus on first. So really, we are really focusing on more or less only figurative arts, because is what is out of balance. We're focusing more or less on only tonal, melodic music, because that's what's completely out of touch, and that's basically what the people also mostly need to be able to have that connection with the divine, or have that deeper emotional emotional healing, so to speak, for that they just don't get from Netflix, something deeper, where they can also be in the present moment. I know Ruxandra, she will be speaking about faith more from a perspective of truth. Something that I highlight is that somebody approaches faith and also their arts through truth, some through beauty, and some through goodness. So for example, when it comes to faith, some will be very touched by somebody just loving you and helping you, and it's just so selfish, and it's like, why are you doing this? I don't deserve it. And it's just, I do it because somebody has loved me so much. And you just get that burning coal on your conscience, and it just touches you in a way where it seems like this is something outside that person doesn't give like the world gives. And for me, it was beauty, right? I had that type of awakening almost with beauty, through music, and then I started noticing architecture, the visual arts, everything like that, how women dress, all of these things. And then I went to the church through beauty, and then I was touched by the goodness I saw there. I was touched by the truth convicted me with Jesus Christ. I have been studying all the New Age teachers. I've been going through all of these different faiths, Freemason, and all of these things. And then when I just sat down and listened to what Jesus Christ said, it was just something there that was just on a completely other level than any other spiritual leader, if you want to say so, through history. And I also studied philosophy. That also had a bit of that awakening for my early midlife crisis was when I was in Barcelona and studied what we call X-Phil, X-Fuck, and ID history. It's these courses that everybody has to take in university in Norway. And it just introduced me to that. And that was also a great part. So I always been a very firm believer in the classical philosophy in combination with the theology, because I think since people are different, and people come to faith and connect with the divine and with God through, both goodness, truth, and beauty. And that's I think a big mistake with the evangelical church, that they've been too much affected by the Enlightenment period, and that's why you don't have that many talented artists in the evangelical church, because they are not just they don't have a place for them there, and they are that's just not, if you let's say you're in a Catholic church, right, and then you come to this shoebox on the corner evangelical church, of course it will be a very big challenge to the spirituality and what you're used to. So I hope to find more of a universal sense where people can come more together, and I think the artists will be able to do that and balance things out a bit.
So you have a universal church idea, like what is sorry, you said I think, and I forgot, what's the denomination of the church that you follow?
Well, I'm in the Presbyterian Church, and what I think is that when it comes to Christianity, of course, the will of Christ is that is unity, of course. But I think that there is it's gone too far low church, right? In general, the whole society has become too functional, too shallow, right? So there is a balance there, but at the same time, now that people are literate and can read their own Bibles and everything, it's just a great opportunity for developing the mind and the truth and all of these things. And some of the beauty and some of the rituals can also lead to distractions for what is the greatest potential in growing spiritually. So I'm looking for churches that has a balance between low church and high church. For example, the CREC, the Communion of Reformed Evangelical Churches, they are aiming for, they have the beauty, but it's a place where both an evangelical and Catholic more or less would find ourselves at home, and all of these areas would be appreciated, because they focus on the whole counsel of God. They very focus on the Old and the New Testament, as many evangelicals would focus more, for example, dispensationalists would focus more on that the Old Testament is more shadows, and in many cases there are for Christ, but they look at the persecuted Christians in the early 2000 years ago, and they say that's Christianity, right? Where do you see them? People say to me, where do you see Jesus talking about music in evangelism? Where do you see the Christians focusing on beauty? And then it's okay, the Bible starts in a beautiful garden and ends in a beautiful city. You have God as the creator. Is a huge theme of one of attributes of God in the Bible. So that type of reductionistic type of view, I think, is something that some of the more historical churches were able to have a much more balanced view about all the attributes of God, the whole will of God. And when you do that, the creatives has also a more central role. The first person receiving the Holy Spirit in the Bible is a craftsman. First person.
Right, a craftsman, yes, very important. A craftsman. Jesus himself was a carpenter, right? But I did want to one more question I want to ask Ruxandra. I think we're itching to get into the whole religious part of it, so I guess we may as well just jump into that. Unless Ruxandra wants to say something else about art, but I was going to say. So I know you are. So you're open to any various Christian denominations. You want to be a bit universalist in that sense, bring them together under the truth and beauty and goodness banner. And I know you said you had pagan friends. So how would you feel about pagans? Or they just know that's out. They must convert if they're
right. Well, I think that beauty. I think beauty unites, and some need to separate themselves out of a certain level of convictions regarding the truth. I just think that we should not be so sectarian, really. I think if you look at Jesus, the way he lived his life, you don't see that sectarian attitude in him. He was very much that loving guy out there speaking with all kinds of people. The same thing with, of course, the apostles right after. It's not a sectarian. The will of God is not like that. So I really believe in spending time and in general stepping out of echo chambers, right? I think that hinders you a lot. So I'm not saying that I should there be like that just everything should be accepted. But what I am saying, I think that what I'm doing, I think that we can all come together for beauty, and that will be a good thing. And that many of those creatives I respect the most, they don't have, check all the buttons with every single thing that I believe. But I have something to learn from them, and some of them are more, more folk musicians, can play, the harp and a little bit mythology and things like that. And I think it's fascinating, and I think absolutely it's no problem for me to. But there must be something that unifies us, right? There needs to be some sort of values that brings us together. If you're going to build an organization, especially if it's a conservative one, as soon the day you start, it will start being pushed toward, a more liberal.
The day you start, you're right. Yeah, the day you start.
So you got to start. You got to start really strong and really pure in one way, right? So, so for example, we start very narrow down in terms of the type of music and visual arts we want more of, and that's the people we support, that's people we bring to the stages, that's the visual artists we bring in contact with composers and they make music videos together. But that doesn't mean that's the only right thing, but there's something at the same time. I think there are if you're doing abstract art, I think you really got to ask yourself, does really the world needs more of that now, even though it feels good for you to make it? So I really think about it in that term, in a more like in terms of culture. What is it that we? How can we make what people actually need today, as as a whole? So yes, that was some thoughts regarding why I can spend time with people who have different convictions, because we are unified in beauty, and all of us understand that there is an objective, transcendent, universal beauty. If you stop, the thing is, if you look at an ugly architectural building, the reason why some people feel good about that is because they react to the story that they made about it, right? They don't really react to reality. They feel the emotions of that story that was made about that building. And the same thing with a lot of visual arts. So I think if there's one message I have, it's let's get real. Just step into reality. Try to really step into the present moment and use common sense, and you get in touch with that universal sense. And if you've been brainwashed, try to step out of those circles a little bit, and just remember that there is something that unifies humans.
Yeah. So Ruxandra, what do you think about all that? I mean, I think that it is what we have to do, but it's hard. It's very hard. Most people do not. Even people who I think should know better over the years have not necessarily and join me in renouncing just the obvious thing that you just said there, where they're doing some abstract nonsense, or the architecture needs a story to explain itself. They don't. They want to believe that innovation occurred through the 20th century that wasn't basically bullshit. They want to believe that there was a significance to it, that they can't seem to cope with with art more than anything else, almost more than religion. They can't seem to cope or believe that it was a bit of a hoax, or a bit of a scam on them, and they've been kind of hoodwinked a little bit, and that art does not have its major significance or meaning via this little story or narrative. Like the thing that gets me with these people is that you can see the historic art. Tourists flock to Paris and London and Rome. They don't flock there to see the modern buildings and the modern galleries. Doesn't that speak to them or tell them something, anything? But it's like, at the same time, if you try to talk about art in this way that we are now, they feel like, no, you can't say it that way. But this is the key. This is the secret to having art that isn't such nonsense. But Ruxandra, what do you think about everything he was saying there? And how do you feel? How would you feel? Because you're a bit. I mean, I maybe you wouldn't be so open to paganism. I don't know. We should talk about the religious part of it as much as we can, maybe, and get into it a bit. If I'm going to make my defenses of paganism, it won't be easy with YouTube. But I think
I should have taken notes because I really agree with everything that Magnus said, and I like that he gave me a platform to go on my line of thought, because he said that there's many ways in which you can approach people and attract them to God and bring them to church, and that's, I think you said, goodness, beauty, and faith. And I think of beauty as an emergent quality of truth. Yeah, you said truth as well as a different category. So I see beauty as an emergent quality of truth. And if beauty lacks truth, then it's not beauty anymore. And so I think I could talk a lot about this. There's so many facets to it, because what happened to people, let's say today, I think there's a cyclicity to history, a cyclicality to history, and I think a lot of the things that happen today have happened before, maybe in a different nuance. However, as you said, why is it difficult to bring this conversation? Why is it difficult to talk about these things? And why is it difficult to bring back, let's say, classical beauty, for lack of a better word? Because I use classicism as a term to describe something that is universally truth and universally beautiful, regardless of the context and time and space. So it's beyond culture, beyond time, yeah. And I think it has to do with what happened with the very fabric, the structure of one's soul, what happened with people in the 20th century. And I think it's because there's a lot of big events in the world, the two world wars, the whole world had to rebuild itself. But it's a spiritual vacuum that I think me and Magnus, we talked a lot about this. There is a spiritual vacuum because human beings have rejected their identity, what they ought to be, because in the beginning God created man to be a reflection of himself. He created man in the image of God. Now we reacted against that. We rebelled against the image of God within ourselves, and we wanted to have a fake image of God. We made God ourselves. So we pursue our own self, which leads nowhere. It comes from nowhere and goes nowhere. And it's exactly the same principle that functions in every other aspect of life. For instance, why is our diet so poor? Why do we eat so much horrible food? It's not even food, it's food-like products. We reject the original flavor of strawberries. It's not enough for us anymore. We wanted to make a copy of it, have a concentrate of strawberry flavor. Then that is not enough. We have to have a synthetic flavor, strawberry flavor. So we copy the copy of the original. So we get to this level of fakeness that in which we get so lost. And of course, when you live in this paradigm of thought, it's very difficult to switch your belief system. It's a defense mechanism that is actually good in itself, but it's difficult when you're on the wrong, when you're in the wrong paradigm. And I think it's as difficult to talk to people about true art as it is to convince them stop eating processed food, stop eating processed sugar. It's exactly the same thing, because we have denied the truth. We have denied the fact that we have a higher calling. We want to be our own gods and do everything according to our own will. And that's very arbitrary. It's very arbitrary. And we talk about relativism. That is some sort of excuse for doing whatever our heart desires, so to say. And even relativism today is misused because relativism, the way it's used in modern rhetoric, is a nonsensical term, because when you say relative to what, it has to have an anchor, reference point. So relativism today doesn't have any reference point. It's synonymous with randomness, chaos, which is false in itself. So we also see the way we use words. We don't use the words in the dictionary. We just feel that today this word should have this meaning, so therefore we change the whole meaning of the word. And it is very difficult. I mean, I can talk on, I can go on many different paths, but as Magnus said, maybe you have a more specific question right now that you want to ask me.
No, unless we want to get into, like, there's certain things about it, but that you said, that you guys both say, that I would be like, okay, well, what about I know you both have. I mean, Ruxandra had her original Christian perspective her entire life, and Magnus came back to his, and you both believe it very sincerely, and I think that's great. And I wouldn't ever want to even attempt to take that away from you or anything like that. For me, it was different. I was raised sort of Catholic. I was raised Irish Catholic, but I don't. I sort of, when you're raised with something from the ground up, and you, I don't know that 100% ever believed it or believed it 100%, but I sort of did. I don't know. This is the sort of wishy-washy nature of what I am, I guess. But I was always skeptical about many parts of it, and I would remain so to this day, sadly. You can say, right? Sadly or otherwise. But I was atheist then for a while. I told you guys this, but and then I came back to belief via Platonism and Neoplatonism and reading the classical authors. And I found stuff in that I never found in reading the Bible or generally even Christian theology myself. And the origin ideas for which a lot of those people like Thomas Aquinas and so forth, got a lot of their ideas from Platonism. So I thought, well, if God is pointing me towards these classical pagans and their thinking, then perhaps he is, pointing me towards their beliefs as well, is basically what it came down to. So when you guys were talking about even in your talk there, Ruxandra, about art and it coming from belief or where its origins, there's also the literal, once again, the scientific process of it. And I think, and at the beginning was one of you guys, maybe it was Magnus, I can't remember, one of you said, the origins of art, Western art, have an objective root and source. I believe that is in Hellenism and in the art of the Greeks, really, because that was even, say,
classicism first.
Sorry?
Classicism first, the classical period first, and then the Hellenistic. Sorry.
Sure. Yeah, you could say that. Yeah, that's fine. But see, really, Western art, I believe, is exemplified in Greek sculpture, and that which was rediscovered in the Renaissance and imbued into all the Christian work as well. But the science of the Greek sculpture is something else, and all the Greek architecture, all the artwork they did, which again it comes back to the fractals, which we discussed privately before. In that, what's his name? Sorry, not Heraclitus. There's another philosopher with an H.
Mandelbrot.
Oh yeah, Mandelbrot is the scientist. Who came up with the fractals. But there's another Greek philosopher who wrote a treatise on Greek sculpture. His name begins with an H, and I can't remember it at the moment. It escapes me. But he talked about how it basically comes down to fractals, and that what they were doing is that each part is in relation to the whole. So when you see a Greek sculpture and he's like sitting there and his fingers raised like this, whatever the position of every little part of it, the finger has been mathematically considered and composed in relation to the hand, which is in relation to the arm, in relation to the entire figure. And that's all the spiral golden ratio. The golden ratio is the great key to art that the Greeks gave us. And again, these were pagans. And you can say gifted by God with this incredible knowledge. And this is the secret and the key to art, which is the expression of eternity through spirals in mathematically composing your art. And that is the basis and the root of Western art. And it is both creative and scientific and everything else. So I just think it's stuff like that. Or I think even say you guys have respect for the logos, and also obviously Heraclitus and the logos being a Greek concept. So this is, I know in Christianity, there's a lot of talk in the Bible how the pagans are evil, the old gods are false, and you must throw them down and discard them. Although, like, say, progressive Christians have no problems with Hindus or anybody else nowadays. So, and you guys are obviously not angry, vociferous against pagans or anything else. But that is sort of the angle of my reasoning in this argument. So I'll ask both of you. What do you think of that? Magnus, what do you think of that?
Okay, I can give some of my perspectives on that. As the classical brought me to God, right? It was classical, reading about the classical arts history, going deeper into that gave me a sense of experiencing something that was deeper than what I have experienced in any other way in my life. if it was a transcendental meditation or drugs or the most hardcore metal concert ever, or jumping down a huge stairs, whatever it was, there was something in the classical, and sometimes it can be modest. It can just be something quiet on a wall, and it brings you a depth to it. And I wondered what was that depth. Um, and you don't have to get into a frenzy or in a type of voodoo thing to get into it. It's just there. It's something that transform you instead of you kind of shaping it with your own perception, which is the subjective part of the arts, right? But there must be something that is objective. So I would say that the classical is part of the whole, and that it is the greatest imitation of creating in the way that God creates. So, for example, you have a lot of principles in the classical which imitates nature. So as soon as you are going away from imitating nature, or you're going away from having humanizing aspects in it, you're going away from the way we have learned that God creates. And it says in the Bible that we are made in the image of God. So I would say that yes, I believe that we have a untrue dualism that I don't believe in. I know there are some in the classical realm that would kind of look at the material world, and you can kind of get stuck there, and then there is kind of this purity of thought, and you should go there, and that has of course been sneaking into Christianity a lot. But I don't think that this dualism really exists, and I think that is something that was emphasized also during the Enlightenment area. You start to have these separation. So as soon as we are able to look beyond the dualism, then again also spirituality and Christianity becomes less of a like this separated thing on the side, and it becomes something that's reflected in everything, also in the classical traditions. And the last thing I want to mention is that yes, the classical gave a sense of peace, definitely. The same thing with many of the Eastern religions. They gave a sense of peace. But I remember looking into the eyes of Christians and seeing a joy and a love there that I frankly saw much more frequent in Christians than any other people. And usually when I speak with people, great classical masters, many of them have peace, but many of them are also a bit stoic. They are very calm. They lack that joy, and they also, in many cases, lack some of the highest virtues, as forgiveness and other fruits and fruits of the Holy Spirit. And I think that's one of the big miracles that's most convincing for me. If somebody gets healed, or somebody is doing some fancy spiritual thing, even the devil can do that. But something that the devil cannot do, that is this completely transformed life that you keep on seeing again and again in Christianity. So I would say that one of the reasons why I think Christianity is so important, that is really if you're seeing the fruits, and that is where we have to go. And of course, Christians some think they are like, I'm holier than thou. I think a real Christian is having that attitude of one of my pieces in Vienna, oh wretched man, that I'm a slave, who will deliver me from death. Right? That is the thing, the message that you see. The really dedicated Christians, they would have that humbleness about themselves. And that makes you weak, so that there can be room for this power. And I think that's a bit different experience than me, than other world religions, and just being like this classical lover, is that that humbleness brought in a power that both transforms and bring in a joy and a love that I never found anywhere else. I think so. That's my witness to that there is something about Christ in his character, in his message, and in the people that are touched, especially those who are got their life turned upside down like mine, that speaks of something very unique. And some people say, okay, Christianity is like another religion, but it's actually the opposite of all other religions. There's no other religion, because all other religions are work-based, but Christianity is the only grace-based. So it's goes against.
How do you mean? How do you mean that?
What I mean by that is that
Yeah.
all other religions, you cannot. You need to be good enough. And also in parts of Christianity, that's very emphasized. But that type of the complete blow to your ego and pride about the cross, that there is nothing you can do to save yourself, not even going through, like Jim Carrey says, that suffering is the way to salvation. No, it's not the way to salvation. You can definitely bring you towards salvation, but it is not the way to salvation. It's only accepting the atoning work of Christ on the cross, and that is the most humbling part ever, and that is completely different than every other religion throughout history. And that's, I think, also testifies that this must have come from something outside human imagination.
Okay, that's interesting. I would have some things to say about that. Ruxandra, what would you say? What would you be done? What were you dying to say to me that you thought?
Well,
I'll fill him with his.
So let's go to the beginning, enarchi, which is in Greek, in the archaic period. I sometimes like to say that I'm looking for this archaic sense of aesthetics. In my mind, in my artistic mind, I'm trying to explore these distant spaces of the past that life used to be unfiltered. And we touched upon the subject that we filter things. We put a lot of filters and layers over reality, and we react to those layers. We don't react to the reality anymore because we're numbed down to, we're desensitized to the reality. So we need all these interfaces that we created ourselves. But to go back to the idea of why Christianity, why we choose Christianity, why we're exclusive with Christianity, is there's a verse that I really like to quote. I love it, from Ecclesiastes. I think it's 3:11. And it says that God put in the heart of man the thought of eternity as well. So when you think about it, actually, in practical terms, every single notion that we have about, every single notion that is in our cognitive space is based on, it has an empirical basis. It's something that we experience in real life. There's two things that are too grand to fit into our own cognitive space, into our brain, into our mind, unless they were revealed to us, and that is the idea of God and the idea of eternity, because obviously we're not eternal the way we exist right now in the physical body. And the idea of God as the ultimate cause of everything is such a grand thought that can only be revealed. That's why a Romanian philosopher said that, you know, we can explore reality, we can use science to explain how things operate, how they operate, but not why. Ultimate truth can only be revealed. It cannot be searched with our own minds, because our reason is actually limited. It can only go so far. And we just keep discovering things, and we learn so much about the single elements of this world, but it's so complex to put them all together. It's exactly like you said, you know, we don't even know today exactly what the Greeks did, how they calculated the golden ratio to work so well, to make the human body in such a glorious form that is universally beautiful and it can stand the test of time. So the God revealed himself to other people apart from his chosen people. Of course he did. Of course people had a memory of the lost paradise. Everybody had. Because if you study the history of religions, they all have a unity in themselves, in the sense that there's a transcendent. So what I think, it's a reverse Platonism here. So a lot of religions, they think in Platonic terms, and that this world is a shadow of a celestial realm. So every single rite, every single ritual, every single tradition is
That wouldn't be Platonic, I don't think. You wouldn't say that so much.
No,
and
I'm talking about the ideas, you know, the myth of the cave, because in the
the
pluralistic, we have pluralism, because we have these ideas that are actually eternal as God. There's God and there's ideas, and everything that is in existence is a shadow of every idea. So it's a correspondent in the realm of ideas. So that to me is one of the reasons why I cannot accept Platonism per se. There's parts of Platonism that really are in line with Christianity because, of course, people have the innate sense of the divinity in them and they can explore the truth, but they're limited. Like in order to have the complete picture, you have to have the whole truth revealed to you. So do I believe that God used Plato and Aristotle to prepare the ancient world for the gospel? Absolutely, yes. I do believe that. Do I believe that moments in history are just a foreshadowing of things to come? Yes, of course. Even like, just to be poetical, I love Alexander the Great. I read about Alexander the Great since I was really small. My name is from Alexander the Great. That's why I got my name. My dad really loved the history. He wanted to name me Roxanne. Ruxandra, his
Oh, nice.
wife.
Is that it? Ruxandra, yeah, nice.
Yeah, so it's a combination between Alexander and Roxana or Roxanne. So the moment Alexander the Great tamed Bucephalus, the black horse, that was a crucial moment for history because the consequences were he tamed that beautiful black horse. That horse took him to the ends of the world, poetically speaking. He created maybe the most impressive empire that ever was in recorded history. He Hellenized the world. The whole world that was covered by the conquest of Alexander the Great learned to speak Greek. There were so many Greek colonies, Greek cities. It absorbed a part of the Greek culture. What was the language in which the Gospels were written? Greek. So the whole world from the Mediterranean to the Far East to India was prepared to receive the message of God in Greek, in its original form, with its original meaning. So Christianity is superficially similar to all other religions, but fundamentally is very different because it is exclusive. So Jesus Christ says that you can only come to God through him alone. So that's already exclusive. You have the law of non-contradiction. And if he said that, that means there are some consequences to it. Platonism has the pluralistic view. That means there's God and there's other things eternal, co-eternal with God. But if there's a being that is metaphysically necessary to exist and it's the cause of everything, that has to be God. And if you imply that there's another thing metaphysically necessary to exist apart from God, it's actually a nonsense to me. And how do I know it's nonsense? It's, when you have a system of thought, that's the problem with a lot of people nowadays. They settle for a lot less and they stop midway. They don't finish the argument. So if you have that belief system, show me how it works, test it. It's like a scientific method. Does it work in terms of explaining how the world works? Does it work in terms of explaining the causality of things? Because as a scientist, if you tell me there's an infinity of causes for everything that is in existence, I'll tell you this is nonsense. You haven't studied physics. You haven't understood the basic laws of the whole universe. There's a unique cause of everything out of which everything stems. There's a cause that brought everything up into existence, which is the Logos, Christ. So in that regard, I believe that God allowed people to look for him, like through darkness, you just walk around and you touch some things, you understand what they are. And those things, they will lead you to the light, which is Christ, the person of Jesus Christ, God revealed. And Magnus put things very, very beautifully, because all other religions, they tell you that there's some sort of self-accomplishment. That means that it also doesn't make sense if you think about it. If you're honest with your fallen nature, if you realize how limited you actually are, existentially speaking.
Okay, well, let me say just a few things there before I lose them out of my mind, because you said so many things. But both of you say many things. Christianity is unique. There's an involvement with grace and forgiveness, etc. But really, they aren't particularly scientific arguments unless you have that belief and you accept it. You take that Kierkegaardian leap of faith. You've taken that leap of faith. You've decided to discard other objections and just say this must be true for this and that. There's not like a scientific basis to it so much as, say, someone like Plato, who has labored, rightly or wrong, over. Oh, we lost her. Oh, she's back. What happened there? You back?
I think my internet was off.
You went out for like 1 second. You went out for like 1 second.
Okay.
So anyways.
It was 5 seconds for me.
Oh, okay. So then you have someone like Plato who's labored over all these reasonable, at least you can say, well, right or wrong. It's all reason-based conceptions about what is good and what is life, etc. So when you said that about the cave, I got confused. Let's say you said he's talking about you're presenting a reason for things, and behind that is another reason, behind that is another reason. That was you were saying that was like a limitless process. When the cave allegory is really, to me, just saying to you, in reality, it just suggests, I think truthfully, that you will never, and I think even for Christians can say this, you will never truly understand the nature of reality, what it's all about. You are no better than the guy in the cave seeing the shadows, and like just behind the scenes, I don't think humans are capable of understanding the true nature and workings of the cosmos, God's plan, and what He's doing, and all. I just don't think I don't think we can cope with it or conceive of it. And I think he's absolutely right about that. I don't think it means a limitless kind of chain of nonsense. So I disagreed with that. What else did you say? Shit, I should have written notes or something. What else about? Let me think now. What was your other major discredit of Platonism towards the end there?
No, I spoke about pluralism because that's essentially what Platonism is, and it was
right. Sorry. I've got it. Before I lose it again. Sorry. So yeah, you're meaning like so that Platonism speaks of the one as the cosmos as a whole, but it doesn't really necessarily speak of God as separate from that. It's like in the dialogues, Socrates talks about the one, talks about the God. It's actually potentially very monotheistic in that sense, that he doesn't really, although he does advocate for reincarnation at the end. He only ever talks about the God, and nobody knows what God he's talking about. But he's already on trial for denying Jupiter. Anyways, so whatever it is he's talking about, I mean, we can only speculate. But generally speaking, the God and the one, truthfully, that's what I like and believe about it, is that they're just suggesting that this stuff is largely unknowable to us. You guys can take your leap of faith and believe you have a scripture and a specific story and a belief that absolutely entails the nature of reality and explains everything for you, where I would believe we cannot know that. And the best we can have is this kind of Platonic speculation, which also is very focused on finding out virtue, finding out what is good, and is the origin. I mean, we have the virtues, we have the Delphic maxims, of which are all the major virtues are laid out there as nicely as you like, if you ask me. It doesn't have the forgiveness stuff and some of the stuff from Christianity, but I don't. This is where we might disagree. I don't know that the forgiveness doctrine, which the Sermon on the Mount, turn you out of the cheek thing, is so great, in my view. But there's one thing Magnus said that is absolutely true, and you cannot deny it. And I would call this the Ned Flanders effect, or whatever, where Christians generally are very happy people and very high achieving people, and that's undeniable. So you can say that, but in terms of the scientific reasons and the arguments against Platonism, those would be some of my counter arguments. So,
that's very interesting, and I like to. This is exactly why I love this conversation, because this brings us into thinking more about these things and to contemplate. I have a big belief in that we should contemplate more in these things, and not just go into this kind of francis and overthinking and overanalyzing, but actually contemplate on certain deeper truths and asking questions, things like that. I think one of the essence of a spiritual life is presence. For me, presence is like ABC in any spiritual life, and you will see that in all spirituality, that just becoming really present. And I think when I come to see of truth and that type of aspects of truth, we have two revelations of God, right? We have the natural or the general revelation, and then we have the special revelation. And my focus on the general or natural revelation of God, that is where I can come and unify with my Catholic colleagues and Orthodox colleagues. My producer is Orthodox. That is where I can come with all my classical friends, where we can, because when we're speaking about the general revelation of God, that is when you, that's where, if there's any gray area that's not highlighted in the special revelation, then I use the reflexive principle, basically, to see if anything is true or if anything is worthy of my attention. Basically, does this reflect God? Right. So, for example, if I'm going to see some sort of music which claims to lead people closer to God, I will then say, okay, so how is this reflecting who God is, so that it is God-centered and not man-centered worship, right? You can see him as the majesty, you can see the human side of it, you can see there's different areas, you can even see the flipping the table side of it. There is different ways, different attributes. And the same thing when I see the classical arts, I see attributes of God there. I see perfection, I see order, I see the beauty, I see a reflection there. And I remember a book that I read, The Beauty of the Lord. And in this book, the definition of objective beauty is fittingness. And so that's just in that moment, we're just
fitting.
They call it fittingness. So basically, what it means is that you experience the transcendence when just everything is just right. Everything just fits. So, for example, if you put a huge classical sculpture inside a cozy little cabin, it's not beautiful anymore, right? Because there is that beauty comes when just everything just fits. Everything is just right. And it's true, like Ruxandra said, it's true. There's something truth about this. It's something real about this. And
that would be the golden ratio, expressing itself through everything correlating to the next thing.
Exactly.
And like fitting it. Yeah.
Yes. And you can go through all kinds of culture that don't even know about each other, and you will find that quest for doing that fitting, fitting and true, and that also has a good effect, a good fruit. So it's morally good as well. So that is when I can come and I like philosophy, because then we'll start thinking about what are the eternal truths, and also then, of course, these, there's a lot of great things we can do. Of course, there's nothing wrong with making music which you can dance to, or if you're making some elevator music, you have some purpose of music for this and that. There's different purposes of music, right? So that's great. But as somebody who has not deserved it but received all of this love of God and love, I think if I'm going to use this limited time I have on earth, I want to find the highest possible worthy, lasting pursuit. And I think that's a great thing also with the classical tradition, is that they are creating for eternity. So, for example, the program Cave of Pellis, they have that, they emphasize this about, you want to be creating for eternity. And we've been talking about the classical before, which can be defined as representing an exemplary standard within a traditional or long established form or style. So those who hold to that, I think, for me, I can sit with them. They will be thinking about eternity. They will be thinking about the transcendence. Plato talked about that beauty leads to the good with a big G, right? The good with the big G. And we can sit there, and I think if you would just call that God instead of good with a big G, you will start to have a much deeper and richer sense of love and joy and all of these things. But that is a faith that comes from God, and some of these things we don't know. And I totally agree with you that we're not supposed to know everything. So we are supposed to know what we have been revealed to us, and that is what we have to go by. And so that's also what sometimes I would say a limitation of philosophy is. It seems like it's this forever, you can go into this huge part of your life becomes this thinking into these patterns and patterns and patterns, instead of taking, okay, this is what has been chosen to reveal for us. Some of the deepest truth in all of reality is said in small little parables, and then you just contemplate on that juice, that concentration of truth and wisdom, and you dwell your mind, because the truth is very simple, or else everybody would understand it.
Truth is definitely not simplistic. That's a mistake that people make. I think, especially when I talk to students, they assume that truth has to be simplistic. I mean, sometimes it can be simple in the sense that it's very easy to understand, but it cannot be simplistic. Otherwise, it's not truth. You know, that's truth has to be singular. There cannot be more truths existing at the same time. And the reason why I love that Magnus, you reiterated what I said, and you, Brendan, you asked the question about the truth. The truth, we cannot know everything, because ultimate truth is so much beyond ourselves that it can only be revealed to us. So there has to be the revelation of truth, a priori, you know, to say it in Latin, in order for us to understand it, comprehend it, formulate sentences, theories, and describe the world in scientific terms. But that's one thing that it's very hard for people to understand, especially students, if you tell them, look, science offers you the possibility to measure things. Replicability, that's a key term in science, like a key term in scientific methodology. You have to make an experiment, and every time you make that experiment with the same conditions, you have to get the same result. But in order to have all these things, you first have to have a philosophy of science. Like, philosophy is above science because you have to have a worldview first in order to articulate scientific postulates or
Again,
maxims.
that is a pagan invention, the philosophy of science. I mean, it was
It doesn't
Aristotle
matter
who
whether
laid
it's
out
pagan
the
or
ideas.
not. It could be pagan
Okay.
in the sense that, yeah, they discovered that this is how it works. And the difference between paganism and Christianity is what I said. People, they use their intuition very well in terms of exploring the divinity, the existence of God. I love Plato. Plato teaches me a lot about God in ways that are very unique and very individual. However, to me, and as I said, truth can only be revealed. It cannot be pursued by our own means. That will reduce truth to something very simplistic. It would cheapen the truth. It would not be truth anymore because it's so accessible. It has to be greater than everything else that we don't even know that it exists. You know, we don't have a knowledge of the entirety of the universe. But the Christianity as a whole, it's the only religion in the world that gives you a comprehensive set of answers for the question of origin, the origin of life, the origin of the world, your state of humanity, the condition of humanity, salvation, meaning, death, and eternity. Like, all these big questions of life, they're comprehensively answered in Christianity. And as Magnus said, as a Christian, I can tell you that Jesus Christ to me is more real than anything that surrounds me right now. He is here with me. I know him as a person. He is God, the Son of God. And I have a relationship with Christ, and Christianity is a relationship. It's not a religion. And I know that God is the only one who's able to change the hearts. I can give you the arguments, you know, but I cannot move your heart. I cannot make you change your thoughts about it. You will have to pursue it with your whole being and honesty, and God will reveal himself to you eventually. So this is how it works. But it is true, you cannot know things. And if you don't know God, then the honest position is, I cannot know. You know, it's this kind of agnostic position in a sense, because you're so limited. You need to have a presupposition for everything. You need to have a hypothesis. And from that hypothesis, you can analyze everything else in life, even if it's like, yeah, obviously this table exists, but then I have to have the hypothesis that I have receptors in my hands and they send electric impulses to my brain, and that sends a message that I am touching a wooden surface. So I have to accept, first of all, the hypothesis that I have a well-functioning body that tells me the truth about the reality through my senses. But then I also have to accept the hypothesis that there is a mind behind that allows me to have these thoughts, because electrical impulses on their own, they're nothing, you know? I mean, there's electrical impulses right now going and charging my phone, but that doesn't mean that my phone has cognition. It doesn't do anything. It's just the sum of its elements that work together. But if you put a stomach together with like I don't know, a skeleton and a heart, and you put everything together, you're not going to get life. because life is beyond that. You can't reproduce life in a lab, even though they might tell you, yeah, they did this. I forgot the name, like Curie experiment, which is really not what people think it is. And you have to have these hypotheses in place, and you cannot test them in the lab, but you can say which worldview works best in explaining everything, which worldview works best in answering all my questions. And to me, it's Christianity. I mean, I can say, I know it's a little bit, I'm using too much pathos, but I believe so much in Christianity that I can die right now. I have no fear, because I am absolutely certain that I am convicted that this is the truth. Because otherwise, if I don't have that level of conviction, I'm just like going in circles, and I have to, my whole life is about finding that answer. So I think we should all have that metaphysical restlessness in ourselves until we find the answer, and never stop.
Well, I agree, and I don't think you should have any fear about your life or death, anyways, no matter what. Because I don't. Let me tell you my ultimate scientific reason for not being atheist, and this is, I've said this before, but I think it's pretty. Tell me what you guys say, because you guys have thought about these things a lot, and other people usually say, like, "Oh yeah, that's great, whatever." But I think of, like, if you view in a perfectly, like, just naturally, instinctually sensible sense, you envision time as a line of string going off for forever into the past and forever into the future, and then you try to imagine existence, not just your own personal existence, your life, but the universe itself as a little blip on the string. So according to the atheist or the total materialist view of the world, the entire universe itself is a finite blip on this string of eternity, with an eternity of nothingness before it and an eternity of nothingness ahead of it, right? And, like, what is the sense of that? Why bother springing into creation for a finite period? Because if something is finite, it doesn't matter if it lasts 100 billion years. It may as well last a second if there's an infinity of nothingness after it and before it. So why the fact of existence itself? This is a very Platonic, I think, concept too. It's like just observing the world, the fact that we exist, that we are here, and energy is in motion, is evidence of eternity. And whatever the factual spirit, the facts of spirituality as to what happens after death or in what form we will continue. Personally, I think something more akin to reincarnation is more likely than the Christian answer, but this is my own personal view. As you see in Platonism as well, the story of who comes back to life and says, "When I died, I saw a wheel, and he was, brought back." But, like, for me, and scientifically speaking, just the nonsensical idea of the evidence of existence is it just proves that, I don't know, the idea that something would just exist momentarily out of nothing and then back to nothing forever doesn't make any sense. So to me, the universe must be eternal, and we are part of this eternal thing, whatever the hell it is. So when you guys talk about knowing the truth, especially when you apply logos, this Greek pagan term, as evidence of it, these are my criticisms of the specifics of your belief.
It's not a pagan term, it's a Christian term.
Logos is Heraclitus, though. He came, Greek.
No, but we took it from them. We took it.
Oh, you took it. Yeah, you took it. I know you took it. But then you also said the pagan evidence of the Bible of the history of the earth. And there's some very kind of slightly silly things the Bible says about, the length of the Earth's existence and some of those things, right? You must admit there's some hypocritical inconsistencies. No?
I don't find anything hypocritical and inconsistent in the Bible. I mean, there's obviously, we live today in a lot of scientific paradigms that will be tested and they're questioned actually a lot. So even the age of the earth is, okay, that's a lot of things at hand. First of all, just to start with the beginning, the reason why I don't think the universe is eternal is because there's an obvious law of causality. There's a chain of causality in everything observable in the universe. There's cause and there's effect. If there's a cause and there's an effect, that means that every effect has its own cause. And we get to an infinity of causes, which is a contradiction per se, because of all the other composite reasons that I'm going to bring up. The other one is the argument of the fine-tuning of the universe. The universe is so well fine-tuned that even in anything, if you if you switch something by 1%, by 0.1%, or by a 0.00 degrees or anything, it changes everything. So you get out of the perfect balance that keeps everything the way it is, in a perfect balance in the universe. So that to me is also an argument why there's no parallel universes, because it is so fine-tuned that it's almost just right from the bat, I can say that it excludes the possibility, even the possibility of having other universes, because this one is exactly how it should be. You cannot conceive a different universe. You can fantasize about things, but that's pure fiction. It doesn't really work in reality.
Because we can't conceive something doesn't mean it's not there. But yeah, I mean,
yeah,
so
exactly,
you think the universe is finite? It began as the Bible says,
yes,
and
absolutely.
But I mean, like when I say the universe, I don't think of. I believe there's maybe the universe has a birth and a death, but that there's something else beyond that, is what I would think. That there's that just not just nothingness like that. What is that? Nothingness as a concept is impossible. That's my.
There's the heavens, like is like the earth, the universe, and then above that, I think it's the kingdom of God, which we all have our hope in, and that's the ultimate reality. So it was the fine-tuning argument, and then the design argument, because we clearly see the element of design in everything, and I can say, even though this is such a controversial issue, even though at the highest level of science, people question these things a lot because it doesn't make sense. And now we're just meekly trying to bring up the question. Evolution doesn't really make sense. We don't observe it. We observe speciation, we observe natural selection, but we never observe a new kind emerging from a different kind. That's not an observable thing. And all the mutation that
I agree.
happen,
Evolution is flawed. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Mutations are negative things. And every speciation, every new species that is emerging right now and becomes more specialized. It is more specialized, but it lost a lot of information in its genome, because you have to drop. It's almost like you have a big ship and you have a lot of, you have food, you have like merchandise, you have a lot of things, and then there's a storm coming and it's too heavy and you have to throw things out. Now you have a lighter ship that can be faster, but it doesn't have that wealth that it used to have anymore. It cannot create as many species of as many kinds of boats or ships as the initial ship could have potentially, because now you've lost so much. And this is exactly what happens in the natural world. So I think this is a great argument. You cannot contest that. I mean, if you're honest intellectually and if you have an intellectual honesty, you cannot deny these things. And there's actually no contradiction between science and Bible. I mean, these two spheres, they're two spheres of knowledge. The Bible tells you the bigger picture of everything that is above. The above.
So you believe? Let me ask you: do you believe the story of Noah's Ark?
Yes, I do. And there's good arguments for that. I have geologic arguments for that. Now you have like the term of neocatastrophism, because it becomes more and more obvious that the geological layers, they're the result of a catastrophic event, but we don't know when that catastrophic event happened. And if you replicate a lot of the conditions of a flood, you can get exactly the layering. So you can have that in a lab. And I can also explain the geologic layers, why there's the Cambrian explosion, why is it.
There's
the other geologic eras above, the Paleozoic, the Mesozoic, and the.
And there's pagan arguments for a flood as well. Deucalion was the Greek version of Noah, and there's many pagan stories of a great flood as well.
Actually, every single old culture in the world has an account of a flood, of a catastrophe.
But I mean, the story of the ark with two of every animal. I mean, I find that one hard. I must say.
Yeah, I mean, I have to jump out for 5 minutes. I'll be back in 5 minutes.
Oh, no problem. Yeah, no problem. Magnus, I mean, we should wrap it up soon. It's getting pretty long, no? I mean, it's very interesting. Obviously, we can go on all night, but I really
it's very enriching. I think there is a purpose to the way the scripture has been made. It's really it's been made in such a way that the humble will see God and the proud will be resisted. And I believe that what has been revealed in the Bible and the way it has revealed it forces any human to become humble, and then they also have that that is when God can work in their heart. So some of these stories, I think they have several layers of meaning to them, several layers of way they are making us more Christ-like. They are teaching us lessons. They are revealing attributes of God. But I think in many ways also they are chosen also in one way of the foolishness, and the Bible talks about that, right? It's about how Christianity is foolishness to people, right? But it is the power of salvation to those who believe. And so I think that is part of the design. So some who believe, they will be saved, and those who don't, they will laugh, but they will be resisted. And that is the sad truth of some of these things. But at the same time, I think there has been a kind of a blind faith fundamentalism and an anti-intellectualism as well that has also harmed a lot of the real Christianity and deserves a lot of criticism as well. But what I would say is that I think it's wise to have a pending attitude, because for so long we have
pending
yeah,
as in
pending as an wait before you
right.
make a firm stand on something
Okay, right,
regarding certain
yeah.
scientific challenges. For
Right.
example, when Darwin started the theories, and and so much of what we have in modernism and the modern society was kind of what kicked it off, right? That gave a way to question everything. They said we are going to be finding all these species where it's like a mix of this species with this species. We're going to find all of this. Yes, it's going to come. We have this idea. We finally have a way of where we have an excuse for not believing in God. And now we are going to push that. And then more and more, now with better and better technology, we see actually more and more people in the scientific world turning to faith because of, for example, the science with DNA. And so many things that they said, we're going to find this proof, we're going to find that proof. They don't find that proof. They find the opposite. Many things that was questioned about the validity of the historical accounts of the Bible, as they have been finding through archaeological discoveries that yes, it was actually true after all. So I think that we should be a little bit careful when sometimes we call what we learned in school in science as that is science, and kind of because that's still a belief. There's still a belief, and in many times also when we are calculating for example, how old something are, that you are using data from one thing and comparing it with another thing. And of course, there has been a lot of theories that has been just said, let's just believe this now because we're going to find this proof, but they don't find this truth. And one, of course, is a very good example is we all believe that a species, microevolution exists, but the macroevolution, there's just so much there that actually there's a lot of people, like lots of trends right now that's going the other way and then what they thought it would be. So that's why I'm meaning by having a pending attitude, that I think if you look back in the Bible, looking at the creation accounts, first of all, there is a spiritual truth to everything that's been said there. And many would claim if you don't have that faith of humble yourself in some of these accounts and saying, we just don't know. So either I'm going to believe these modernists that hated God and has done everything they can to create these very nice strategies to put people out of faith, or you can say that that some of these were meant, if you study down, and you can say, okay, it might be that some of these things have a spiritual reality to it, and you can start there. But I think that there is a deepening in spiritual growth by being able to grow in faith in some of these things. But I don't believe in this kind of blind, you need to be able to stand up for it. But I think that after the Enlightenment period, we have given way too much emphasis on what the senses can take in and what is true, because it's very easy to be deceived. If you just look at the magician, people can basically, they don't see the airplane anymore. So, you can manipulate. And so if a person can manipulate your mind to believe so many lies and actually see something that's not there, can you imagine what Satan can do? Satan is extremely intelligent. Without the wisdom and the protection of God, he can completely mislead. The spiritual forces are no match to change our minds, to lead us into wickedness. And that is why that light, that to see in the revelation, in the special revelation, help us to protect us there, put on the armor of God so we can stand against our darts of the wicked one. But at the same time, also being awake. And that is the ABC of spirituality. And that's why the classical world is so important. That's why I have so much respect for the Catholic Church, the Orthodox Church, and other communities of faith that understands that beauty is a way to wake people up spiritually, to stay in the present moment, because you cannot really change much if you're not able to stay present, right? So, and beauty and the way of the classical wisdom, I think that this is a very important part God has chosen to lead people to God. And he still does that today. And it was always the meaning also back then that would be the ultimate end, would be to lead people to salvation.
Okay, that's very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. So in my belief, I would not necessarily have this evil figure, a binary system of good and bad so much, and the figure of Satan there as a threatening something I have to worry about even. It's sort of more of like a spectrum of things from good to bad, more involving stupidity or chaos. But I was raised with Catholicism. I do have maybe this, I obviously, any Western person has some of that concepts within them. But, I don't know. When you start talking about Satan and stuff like that, I don't know. It's tricky. It's a tricky one because it's not, you have to, if you're involved in that belief and that faith and you have a sincere belief in it, then it does bifurcate the world into this good, bad thing business, which is some other kind of matter. And it's interesting and it's a very Christian view. But one thing I would like to ask both of you is, like, you're both fans of classicism. You have the luxury of enjoying the pagan classics from Homer to, Aristotle and everything in between. So what, as again, like I said at the beginning, what so influenced me towards paganism was, so much a wealth of incredibly valuable human information from these pagan characters. And then versus if you can just step back objectively for a minute, not just the revelation stuff, and the more personal kind of aspect, what comparable value philosophically can be withdrawn from the Bible, which can, I'm sure you guys have examples and you will cite some, but that's the problem for me. I see much more value in the knowledge from the pagan guys. And if the Bible is the supposed word of God, etc., why is there not more of that incredibly valuable information, at least as far as I can see? And what would you guys say to that?
I'm sorry, Magnus. I didn't want to lose this thought, but you can interrupt me if you want to. It's something that I said on your during your interview, Magnus, because I thought about my artistic statement, and I think it's very important to talk about the logos as the root of everything, as the root of art, as the root of science, because with art, so the Greeks in some way were so focused intellectually, emotionally, investing themselves in a way that we can't really comprehend right now. Probably because there were not that many distractions at the time. That's a problem of the modern world. We're distracted all the time. We can't really focus. We have too much information. We don't know how to select things. We have too many interfaces. But the problem with visual beauty is that it goes straight to a man's heart. So it's incredibly seductive. It appeals to emotions first, and then it goes to the intellect, if it even gives the intellect a chance, or even if we give the intellect a chance ourselves. Because sometimes we just like to be drawn in and seduced by the physical beauty, the beauty that is tangible. And it can be so glorious that it's intoxicating, I mean, it can apply to so many things of life. But it doesn't lead you higher. It doesn't take you out of your limited condition. It doesn't take you out of your mortality. It makes you think about immortality. It makes you think about eternity, but it doesn't do much than just to switch your thoughts for a moment, because you feel after a while that it's just there as a reminder of something that you don't have yet. And Christianity has it. And I think Christianity has all the answers, and I'm going to ask you actually whether you read the whole Bible and whether you read theology, because for 2,000 years, I think the main concern of the Christian church was to answer the biggest questions of life. And I think some of them that people ask today, I'm not talking about you, so I'm not demeaning in any way. But I say about what I see in students, from university that I talk to, or people that I interact with, they just throw these questions like, yeah, Christianity doesn't offer anything, or Christianity says that, and that is a nonsense. And I think about it, they just already assumed that there's no answer to that, and they're smart. But that question was answered comprehensively, exhaustively, 1,600 years ago by somebody living in a monastery somewhere in Alexandria. They thought about it without having the internet, without having access to encyclopedias. And they thought about those questions with such an intellectual refinement that is very lost to us today. I mean, I read the Church Fathers sometimes. I really recommend Minucius Felix. There's a work called Octavius. It's a work of apologetics. If you read about the intellectual refinement of the time, you feel like, I don't know, you feel like a worm, like a worm in the street in the rain or something.
Whenever you read, yeah. I mean, try to read Aristotle. It's hard going. Aquinas is hard enough too. Jesus.
But
hard.
there's so much more that you don't know, we don't know, and we read and we find out, wow, and that's what I'm saying. I mean, having studied Christianity, I've read the Bible numerous times from Genesis to Revelations, several times. Read the New Testament, I can't tell you how many times, it's over 30 times, I think. I've read apologetics, and never, when I have doubts, I'm really happy, because if I have a doubt about something, if I don't understand it, that gives me an opportunity to question my beliefs and to get more knowledge. And when I get at the bottom of the knowledge sack, I do not have that doubt anymore, and just reinforces my faith. And I haven't had in my lifetime, and I think I ask a lot of really serious questions, because you talk about the existence of evil, whether there's such a thing as Satan, whether there's such a thing as the devil, it's very hard to be in a situation of incredible evil around you, to see how bad and degenerated human nature can be. And you think this is impossible, to just be a fabrication of one's mind to come up to this. I mean, if you look at the First World War, the Second World War, the atrocities of the communist persecution, what they did to Christians in prison or people who wanted to resist the state. I read about these things and I don't even know much. And it's impossible for me to even speak of them. And if you see these things, you will be forced. There has to be an absolute truth. I cannot take this anymore. It doesn't work anymore. It's impossible. It's impossible that there's not a thing. There's not a thing such as the devil. You have to. You come to this conclusion by necessity somehow, and these things are sometimes revealed by the circumstances of life. It's very difficult to search them philosophically, sometimes from books or at a desk, because we are not aware how much our heart and our emotions influence our intellect and our intellectual conclusions. So I'm saying that I think, from my point of view, from my experience, Christianity has given me all the answers to all the questions that I had in a comprehensive way. And the things that I don't know, the reason why Christianity didn't focus so much on aesthetics is because if it were to be focused on aesthetics, Christianity would be just another religion focused on aesthetics, because people are so easily seduced by it. So we're just gonna lose ourselves in this rite and just perpetuate this ritual and proclaim self-salvation, auto-salvation, which is impossible. That's what Christ did. He took everything upon himself to redeem humanity as a whole, because humanity is incapable of taking itself out of the mortality, the state of mortality. Yeah, so I think I said quite a lot right now.
No, that's very good. Yeah, I mean, in all the religions, there was a concept of judgment, anyways, that you would do some external justice and judgment would fall upon you based on how your actions in life. Anubis would weigh your heart, as it were, right? But Magnus, would maybe you want to say some final words because I really have to wrap it up. I'm sorry, I could go on for
Yes,
we could talk for probably 5 hours about this, obviously.
that's right. So I think your question was about appreciating philosophy instead of going to the Bible, for example. Do I understand you correctly that you want to argue for why not?
Why was there not something more philosophically profound, something more valuable to Western civilization in the Bible as comparable to some of these things from the classical period, pagan period?
Right. Well, again, I would say that what's true in any literature, what's really true, and what is which at the same time will have a sense of beauty to it because it's true. It's like it's beautiful, and then it will be good. It will make people better. That is the working of God. So you could say, okay, again, God is over here in the Bible, but God is omnipresent. God is omnipresent. He is eternal. He is in everything. He is so. Again, I would say that he has made a way to reach his people, and I think that he can work through all kinds of means. I think he worked through the classical philosophers. I think he worked through Pharaoh, right? He brought about his purposes through Pharaoh, wicked Pharaoh, and so he can bring about some of the Christians.
That isn't more specifically what I mean. Like, so the philosophy of Jesus and the philosophy of the Bible, like, what are the main philosophical points that would be profound and everlasting? We
reject the hypothesis, Magnus. Reject the hypothesis.
Oh, okay.
What I would say is read Ecclesiastes, because knowledge is one of the vanity pursuits, where you will go to the end of the life and you say, I have all knowledge, I am the wisest man in the world, and it was all vanity. Because at the end of the day, if you have all the wealth in the world, you are the wisest man in the world, you have all the women in the world, no matter what pursuit you take, at the end of the world, if you didn't do it in the service of God, you will not be satisfied. That was one of the most wealthy, most wise, most talented individuals in history's answer at the end of his life. And he was very, very frustrated with many of these things before. So that's what I would say, that the Bible is made in such a way that will actually satisfy. And
you feel he's, so you just say that all the pagan works are basically through him, and that via, but even though it's not specifically in the Bible,
all of this is valuable, but at one point I think it leads more and more toward, and as the closer we come to the concentrated juice, where we can stay longer on a few smaller, even a small parable can say more than 500 pages of these ongoing thoughts, and it will be more satisfying, and it will bring more love in the heart. And I would say, judge it by the fruit. What brings about the highest virtues? And that is what I think. And at the end of the life, what is most satisfying? There's a lot of people in academia that loves reading a lot of books, but that doesn't necessarily make them virtuous. But I really respect so many in the classical world, because they are pursuing virtues, just like Christians are pursuing virtues. And many of them are gentlemen, and they are ladies, and it really makes a lot of good to them. So I would say, and I keep saying, and I do watch philosophy. I read philosophy. It was an important step for me into faith. I have a lot of belief in it. I would just say that I don't think it's the end. And I think if we keep on to the end of life, to not go into more of a spiritual focus, that we will not unleash our potential. And if we unleash our potential in our mind, in our soul, in our heart, that's also how we will unleash our potential as creatives, to have the biggest impact, to transcend modernism, to make people more noble, to save the Western culture, to do all kinds of things that will be very, very good for this world.
That's very good. That's a very good response. That's very good. So you guys feel, do you feel at all forgiving towards my sort of abstract concept of God, or do you think I? What do you think?
We're
I must say,
horribly
someone.
upset with you.
Yeah. Well, we didn't descend into fighting like, you're wrong. But
Well,
so I'm thankful for that. As we've been talking, people have been saying they've been watching the opening of the Olympics in Paris, and apparently it's a absolute progressive shit show. Someone says the Olympics opening is usually pretty satanic, but this one was over the top, replacing the Last Supper with a bunch of transsexuals, bringing the flame in
Wow.
with a pale horse, and apparently it's just absolutely outrageous.
Wow.
I mean,
I
so
fear
there we
that
go.
this might happen, but I never thought to that extent, and that's the reason why I chose not to watch it somehow, because I kind of anticipated
Yeah,
something like, wow,
yeah, I would agree. I would not have
it
any time for
hurts.
that. Yeah, it hurts. It does hurt. Yeah. And
Yeah.
again, I mean, I've always got my original Catholicism with me somewhere, no matter what I do. I don't know what to make of myself or my views. But you guys do live exemplary examples of everything you're saying, in that Christians are, in fact, high achieving, happy people. Excuse me, and it's true, you know. And you as you said, Magnus, observe it by its fruits or whatever, right? But still, for me, I have I have my beliefs. I have my trouble with it, I guess. But again, I'm just kind of strange, half and half thing. I don't even know what to make of myself. I can only
well,
make my
I
strange
think it's
argument.
an honest and genuine pursuit for truth. I think is and at the right time, certain truths will be illuminated. That's what I trust, and I even Israel means wrestling with God, right? So this is wrestling with God is not like in Islam where it's just kind of that obeying. It is together with faith there is doubts, and just thinking about these things instead of worrying about losing ourselves in the world is a much more noble pursuit. And you're actually, in one way, who knows, you maybe God working through you right now to strengthen our faith, to make us think more, to prepare us for some battles with some crazy dark forces. Who knows, you're part of everything. I believe all things work together for good for those who love God, those who are called according to his purpose. So that means that you somehow are working all things together for good, at least for us, because we love God. And I think you also love God, but we there is we're kind of looking at the thing with a bit different language, and that's okay. But I think there is a certain wisdom in using the language of very, very impactful people like Jesus, and you thinking about the way he's expressing these things. That I think the way you see truth and the way Jesus expresses it has a lot of there's a lot of commonalities. There's a lot of the same things. It's just said with different words. And then it's, I would say, what brings the best fruits, which words to use. And I think that's the thing with Christianity. We try to fill our minds with the word of God, and it because that seems to be the will. At the end, I will just say Christians are not this holier than thou. A real Christian would be very humble, especially those who believe in grace, because then you really didn't do anything for your own salvation. You were chosen. You were chosen. So that was what broke my heart. I was sitting in church listening to Bach music. I was not a Christian. The Bible was read. The words didn't make any sense to me. I philosophized about them. I thought they were about getting into the present moment, because I was all reading Eckhart Tolle at that time. Sunday after Sunday, I was sitting there. The word of God didn't make any sense to me. It was just this type of strange. And then it was one sermon where he says, the sin is yours, talking about looking what you have in your own eye before you help others. And nothing what got given to me before I realized my own sinfulness. So I don't really talk too much about Jesus. I don't really talk too much about the gospel. The one thing that I talk about in my music, that is to help people to repent. Without repentance, there can be no saving faith. So that was what changed everything for me. That first I started noticing that every time I looked at other people sinning, I was sinning at the same time. I was like, I was such a hypocrite, right? I had all these anger problems and gambling problems. I came up in the kitchen with blood on my fists because I was hitting the walls and things like that. And then I was thinking, I'm such a hypocrite, right? I see all this sin in other people, and there's just so much working in me. And then there was another one where it was like, every time God saves, he first calls you, and it's like, but that doesn't make any sense. If I am now knocking on, like, please, that makes sense. But no, he first, while even I was in my sin and taking advantage of all those women and doing all these things, he ran out to me, and that love just crushed my heart one of those Sundays. And I can remember I was sitting there, and I just felt that this strong sense of power around me. And I remember saying to myself, I feel safe. I never felt as safe as this. And I think that what I just realized now, this is real love. And I've never felt real love truly before. And after that, my desire started to change. And after that, when I heard the word of God, it was like somebody was putting lights on it. It was illuminated after that. That's what happens with the Holy Spirit. So we can't, some of these things they're meant, just like the Pharisees. They were not chosen for that time. So they were not, because if the truth is revealed and we understand it and we reject it, we reap up more judgment for ourselves. So God has done it in a way where he is kind of, out of grace, he's actually hiding the truth until we have that repentance. And that is when everybody who believes will be saved. Okay, that will be my last thoughts about that.
Okay, that's very good. That's very good. I don't want to carry it on any. I could say so many more things. Like, I don't like when you talk about repentance. I always think, well, in platonically speaking, to actually discover what is good or bad is such a difficult thing. It requires so much scrutiny and work to even know what is the right thing to do. Like, because so many hard decisions involve the lesser of two evils and all this.
I hear you, but the only thing you got to do is just go to the 10 commandments and then honestly say, am I a good person? If you go through the 10 commandments, okay, most people will say, I'm a pretty good person. Okay, so have you ever lied?
There's a lot of talk about trespassing. There's a lot of talk about trespassing in the 10 commandments.
Excuse me?
It's just a joke. So it's just a joke. Sorry. Pardon my joke.
Right. Well, so it's so easy, I think, if you go through the 10 commandments and understand that that's the standard that they will be judged by. It's not that, the law is there. It's impossible to keep the law. It's 666, not 666, but it's 600 and something laws in the Old Testament. They were never meant to be kept. Nobody was ever, any Jew ever kept all the laws. It was completely impossible to do that. And that was the purpose, because it was just a way, exactly like you say, what is bad? Well, in the Bible, it says this is the bad traits of human nature. We made it like a mirror. It's not the meaning that it's impossible to keep it all, but this is just to realize that we cannot invent our own goodness. And then if we are then saying, that's what we'll be judged by, then we will need to find a way not to be judged by that. And that's where the humbleness starts. So I've been completely on the other side of the, on this. And it's a miracle in one way how some of these things just it's like there is a power that's working that convicts that I cannot explain, basically. And before that happens, so much is intentionally hidden.
Yes, no, I appreciate everything you're saying, and I appreciate all the work that both of you are doing. And I agree with you about, say, 90% of it, and I have my own little views otherwise, but like definitely your people to be promoted and helped, and everything you're doing is excellent. And you have, certainly.
Yes, I'll keep fighting for the classical
right ideas. As much as anybody can say they have the right ideas about anything.
The church has so much to learn from the classical traditions, the classical creatives, especially the evangelical church. That's my message out there, that I want to find the greatest talents and the church has so much to learn from both the wisdom, from the practical wisdom, from philosophy, because there's so much there that can help us to look at the truth in different ways, to develop and create that standard of excellence, create that aspirations for people to want to become better and to grow and to aspire, and we need that. That's a wonderful thing that the classical tradition does better than anybody. So we should be fighting for that. Every Christianity has been fighting for that a lot, right? They've been walking hand in hand through history, and I think it's time again that we realize, okay, Christians, you need to humble yourself a bit and say there might be a lot you can learn from the heathens, and you can learn from the pagans. You can learn from other people that are just much better than you to do certain things for goodness or beauty or these various things, or are able to say the truth in a way that some people understand that normally don't understand it if you just tell the stories like there is from the Bible. Like for me, I had people telling the gospel throughout my life. I played when I was 12 years old in a Christian metal band. After that, there was no more Christian bands, but I heard the gospel many times. But I had to see the reflection of God through His creation before, right? So I just think there needs to be an understanding that there is not a reductionistic, but a holistic approach to the way we get truth, goodness, and beauty out to the hearts of people. And we can all agree that these three traits makes people better. It ennobles people. And that's something we, at least in this polarizing world, we can come together with. And that will help us to overcome this death of modernism that we're seeing destroying so many families, destroying the best traditions we have, making so many people depressed, are making people so materialistic that we are just raping the world, right? So we go back to it. The solution for everything is to make people more present, more spiritual, and to seek honestly good truth, goodness, and beauty. And then all the other things will be management and politics after that. So I think that's where we need to come together. And your listeners here, I think they also should try to find ways they can unite with Christians, even though they at this point have all these bad experiences with Christianity or whatever it is. There are actually many Christians who see ways where we can become better together, and we can do more, especially as creatives now, than trying to be sectarians, because some people who are not Christian can also be sectarians in their own ways, and I don't think it's good for people.
Yeah, I agree with that. And in fact, my whole thing recently anyways is really to try and find a way for Christians and pagans, European pagans, to sort of philosophically and artistically combine themselves without
absolutely
fighting.
I love that.
You agree with that? So that would be my whole thing that I'm trying to do these days. Like, so it's,
I love
rare.
that, Fish. That's exactly what
they love to fight. They love to attack each other and fight. And it's like, no, there's no need. Like, I mean, there's differences, but I don't know. If there's some way, that's what I would like to do.
Absolutely.
I think true Christians, if they get into debates or polemics, because this is not a fight, what we're doing. I mean, we're doing it out of love, because if I am convinced that I believe in what is true, then you'll be so selfish and evil of me actually to keep it for myself and not to share it with people. And so debates, I think that the message should be should be repeated over and over again, because in today's society, we fear debates, we fear people who have different opinions than we do. And I think if you're in a position where you're afraid of debating your own opinions and you respond, like we see it in social media, what's happening right now in academic circles, you react, you don't act, you react with anger, you react with canceling things. So if your worldview and if your beliefs are so fragile that you can't take polemics, then you're in the wrong place. And that's a very, that's a hard truth that a lot of people are ready to accept. But the hopeful thing is that there's so much thirst for beauty, for classical beauty. And classical beauty, as we talked about, I think we all agree, it has truth. It's emerging from truth because it appeals to everybody. I think there's nobody in this world that would look at the Diskobolos, the ancient classical Greek sculptures or the Hellenistic ones and say these are ugly. It's impossible. because there's beauty that is universal and is universally appealing, and it appeals to the universal part of the human soul, and it's a part of the human experience as a whole. It's a holistic concept. We talked about it, and there's so much thirst, and I think people when they see it, they come to it immediately. And I don't like to point fingers, this is going down, like this is terrible. There's actually so much good that we lost focus of, because we have too much information that we're naturally supposed to have because of social media. And what's propagated is more the negative all the time. And that can keep us trapped. And there's goodness, there's beauty, there's amazing artists today. There's amazing artists that they're just dedicated to continuing the long artistic tradition of thousands of years, because it took thousands of years of accumulated knowledge and experience to get to the point where we are. So I'm very optimistic and I'm very hopeful.
Yes, live in a very, very a time full of opportunity right now, because modernism is dying, and people are looking for leadership. I have people coming to me and say, "Hey, I was just waiting for somebody doing something like what you're doing now, Magnus, bringing together the composers of the world, and for Together for Beauty, bringing together these events, these platforms, so we can facilitate use the free market to bring about more quality, more beauty transactions out there, and by that outconquer the stately systems and the and so it's a time where, if the creatives look at themselves as also a leader, and that the idea, the mind, we need to be fighting for the mind, right? This is the spiritual battle is in many ways a battle of the mind. That's the strongholds that needs to be taken down. And beauty is not enough. Just to make that very clear, it's not enough. You cannot transcend modernism just through beauty. It needs also to be, you need to build the mind, a strong mind, a grounded mind. You cannot be a real classical artist if you don't have the understandings in the mind, and you have the, just like you couldn't be a Christian artist if you don't have the heart where you love Christ, right? What's Christian about your art then? So we need to be working also on the inside with people. It's not enough just to make but thank God, beauty also transforms people. It goes both ways. It's a spiritual formation to do excellent work. It makes us better, and it also transforms. So I know that you need to go, and I just want to thank you so much for the opportunity to be here, and for the listeners here that have been with us so long. I would love to hear what people are thinking. If there's any places where we are going wrong, I want to know that. I'm really, like, I've gone through so many stages in my life. I honestly don't want to be here as a big dummy and think something or believe something that's not true. I really want to know what's true, and learn from people I come to. And I hope that we will see bigger unity with the classical communities and the church, and that together we can bring about a new classical revival, and a revival of beauty, because really the lack of beauty is the Achilles heel of a lot of the modern world, because everybody loves really beauty, unless you are a very, very dead soul and or very, very brainwashed. So that is one of the things I think we should lead with, because it's exciting. It is a bit provocative. It's very strange that it's provocative, but it actually is. I guess some attacks because of this, because of such a thing as beauty. But it's at the same time, it's clear, and it inspires people to become excellent, because beauty is often when you get that goosebump, or you get that,
you start crying when you hear the song. You start crying.
Exactly. It is, and that's one of my goals is, how can we make goosebumps, right? If that's the goal, then there will be lots of things that needs to happen. To how can we create more goosebumps with our visual paintings or drawings, our music, make more of those moments where they are drawn into that deeper reality, or they get that healing.
Yes, and I absolutely agree. I've been myself, trying to champion the same thing for a long time. So it's great you guys are so organized and so good. I listened to Magnus's music, neither his, but I suspect that both his sweet black metal riffs and his classical music are excellent. If Ruxandra obviously is an excellent artist, and some people are commenting they followed her links, and I'm sure you both are very good artists in your own right, and we all must try and do our best. And yes, the loss of art is one of the main problems in the modern world. Absolutely. I believe it's through the muddling philosophy. Modernists have taken the brand of art and they've labeled it in their own, they've given it a definition, something that's indefinable in a way, art. They've defined it and put their own definition on it. And that's what we suffer with and what most people have trouble getting past. And that is our work to get over that one way or the other. And apart from that, we had our religious religious debate, and we're okay for it. We survived.
Yeah.
And
that's right.
And hopefully we are heading towards some kind of, I don't know, some way we can all, in a sort of a proper intellectual, uncheesy, not a new agey way, sort of come together and talk about spiritual matters and things like this. Yeah, so, guys, I definitely got to go. I mean, we go on for another 5 hours. So thanks a lot.
Thank you so much for having us. It was such a lovely time. We barely scratched the surface of things, but I'm happy we managed to meet and talk about the things that unite us. We should stick together.
Very, very good. And for the listeners, togetherforbeauty.com/marketplace. If you have something that you believe is objectively beautiful, post it there for review. Would love to help you and build you up and help just build jobs, create more opportunities, bring more power into that. That's ways where we start to bring collaborative projects. You might be able to be featured on our events, things like that. That's just some of the ways where we can actually take this and put it into action. I like to put things in action. Thank you much for having me here.
Okay, great. And thanks so much for coming on, both of you.
Thank you.
Very, very smart people. And goodbye, everybody.